So, the translations, I'll just read that again. So, chapter 18 of Isaiah. This verse is difficult to translate. Several words that are only used here, and which may be Isaiah's poetic creation based on words forms he knew and played with, makes it so that he must guess at the meaning of several words. Here is a tentative translation that attempts to be fairly literal with the words we do know and at least conveys the basic meaning. That sends envoys by sea and who go on the surface of the water in vessels of papyrus. Go you, swift messengers, to a people tall or extended and smooth or hairless, to a nation feared far and wide, or from here or there. A nation strong and powerful, meaning very uncertain, could be a nation measured and meted, whose land is divided by rivers. The Egyptians were able to keep their long country, including Cush, together partially because of the Nile, made transport and communication easy and swift. They often traveled in boats made of papyrus, which is what is meant when Isaiah speaks of sending messengers in vessels of bulrushes, better translated as papyrus. Isaiah seems to be describing the Cushites sending messengers to other countries via Egypt. Egypt was a nation that had long been powerful and feared, at times being the most powerful and dominant nation in the known world. Their priests and many of their leaders fulfilled priestly functions, were typically completely shaved, which was a stark contrast to the appearance of respected leaders in neighboring countries. Thus they might be described as smooth or hairless people. It could also be that this was a way of describing the African Cushites. The Nile divided the land, and at this delta portion it became many rivers that divided the northern portion of the country in many ways. Thus, this entire verse may just be a poetic way of describing a fabled and old country. It seems quite likely that when Isaiah says that sends envoys by sea, he is speaking of the Cushites, sending envoys to others, including Judah, and in their political maneuvering and at extending their own power and keeping the Assyrians at bay. The phrase, "Go you swift messengers," to a people tall and hairless, seem to describe messengers being sent to Egypt or Cush. Thus Isaiah may be describing the diplomatic correspondence between Cushite Egypt and Judah that lead to Judah allying itself with Egypt in their rebellion against Assyria. While undoubtedly Egypt is being described in this verse, a latter-day fulfillment of this image could include the sending of missionaries from the earliest days of the Church until now, missionaries who go throughout the world swiftly bearing tidings of the gospel. As it made clear, the following verses, judgment is coming. Here the Lord uses the imagery of the envoys of Egypt who traveled so swiftly to help people envision how he would gather an army that would bring judgment to many nations. In ancient times, warriors gathered to a banner raised up when horns were blown, which is another image Isaiah employs as he tries to help his readers and listeners picture what God is doing. In some ways, this may have had a fulfillment when the Cushites gathered an army on their way to aid Judah in Hezekiah's day. Hezekiah found relief from the Assyrian attack on his people when the Assyrian army left their portion to go fight the Egyptian Cushite army that had arrived to help Judah, as they had promised they would. It was at this time that the Assyrians were miraculously destroyed, and it is quite likely that the Egyptians had a hand in that destruction. Thus, a possible fulfillment of this verse is the gathering of the Egyptian army to bring judgment to Assyria as they afflicted Judah, something that would tie in well with the last verse of the previous chapter, which said that all who afflicted God's people would be destroyed. Yet there are surely other fulfillments of this image: the gathering together of several nations to defeat Assyria, nations that combine later to destroy Babylon, and even later those who combine to bring about the fall of Rome. In each instance, armies were gathered to bring judgment to someone who had plagued the people of God. There are also a clear Latter-day Saint fulfillment in the gathering together of the saints of God, as they carry forth the warning of the judgment attached to the second coming. Isaiah depicts in verses 4 through 6 that God's judgment in the form of a gardener. He first describes himself as waiting for the right moment. Verse 4 could be translated thus: I shall be still and quiet. I shall be still and quiet, and I will look on from my dwelling place, like the shimmering heat from light, as a cloud of morning mist, in the heat of the harvest. Thus God describes himself as waiting for the right time to harvest in judgment. He is almost unnoticed until his moment comes, by way of his messenger, God. In God indeed warns of judgment. However, many may ignore his warnings, nor will they notice God's actions yet. For he is waiting as the messengers issue their warning cries. He is barely discernible to the untrained or unwilling eye at this point. He is like the shimmering moisture that creates a barely seen vapor or movement in the air just above the hot surface of the earth. He is like a little bit of mist that gardener gathers from the moisture given off by plants in the heat of a summer morning, just before harvest. Yet these small things are discernible, and provide evidence for those who are willing to see it, that God is there. His messengers are blowing the trumpet, and those who listen and take note will be able to detect God's presence. Sadly, those who do not listen will not believe that God is ready to come out in judgment. Yet, when he does, it will be before they accept it. The harvest is expected to come when fruit is fully developed. Instead, when first is still a bud, or when grapes are barely forming, but not even close to being ripe, God will begin the judgment. At this unexpected time he will shear off the forming fruit, and cut down the branches on which they could grow. This greenery will be left to rot and for birds and animals to eat, and then to use as material for their dwellings. In other words, before you know it, God's judgment will be upon us. This unexpected judgment surely happened to the Israelite, Egyptian, and Assyrian, Babylonians, Persians, and Romans. It will also surely happen in our day, despite how many messengers we are sending to warn the people to repent. Many people will be caught by surprise, for they will not have listened to the message, nor will they have discerned the telltale signs. Historically, this was probably a warning to Judah that though they were expecting Egypt to deliver them, they would find instead that the Assyrians would quickly come and cut them all down. Isaiah often intended more than one meaning to be applied to his prophecies. One way this set of verses may have been intended was as a warning to Judah to do nothing and trust in God rather than trust in the Egyptians. Isaiah may have been encouraging them to sit and be still, like God, rather than frantically sending messages back and forth between the two countries. Trusting in Egypt would be like trusting in the morning mist, which disappears quickly in the heat of the summer day, and would result in an unfortunate judgment coming upon Judah. Judah did make an alliance with Egypt and was almost completely destroyed as a result. Yet their eventual repentance and reliance upon the Lord, led by Hezekiah, who was taking these same steps himself, caused the Lord to miraculously deliver Jerusalem. Egypt did play a role in that deliverance. The Lord used Egypt in some ways to help his people, but regardless of Egypt's role, deliverance came only because Jerusalem learned to trust in God and not Egypt. At that point, Egypt could be a tool in God's hand, a part of his divine plan for deliverance. Again, the verse is difficult to translate in verse 7, but with the same seldom seen words used above being employed again, a literal yet understandable translation could be as follows: At that time a tribute will be brought to the Lord of armies by a people tall or extended, and smooth or hairless, a nation feared far and wide, or from here or there, a nation strong and powerful, meaning very uncertain, who trample, whose land is divided by rivers, to a place of the name of the Lord of armies, to Mount Zion. The phrase, usually translated as the Lord of hosts, literally Jehovah of hosts or armies, is I translated as Lord of armies. To highlight the connection I believe Isaiah is trying to make between the army gathered at the beginning of the chapter and the one who truly gathered at that army. Throughout portions of the Old Testament, God often refers to the place where he would build his temple, or Jerusalem, as the place where he would put his name. This verse is saying that after God has gathered and sent his armies, and after judgment has come, those who have followed him will come to him once more, in the temple of Jerusalem, or symbolically in the temple of Zion, to reaffirm their fealty or loyalty to him. In some ways, it speaks of how, at some point, the Cushites or Egyptians would come to Jehovah. It may also have reference to Judah's initial reliance on Egypt, after which they turned to rely instead on the Lord. It seems that initially Hezekiah followed in his father's footsteps, as Ahaz had ignored Isaiah and relied on Assyria for aid instead of Jehovah. Hezekiah turned to Egypt for aid instead of quietly doing nothing and relying on Jehovah. As a result, judgment came, as the Judean cities and landscapes were being systematically and brutally destroyed by Assyria, and perhaps beginning even before that. Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem, under Isaiah's guidance, learned their lesson and came to rely on Jehovah. Much of the reform effort centered in Jerusalem and the temple. Reaffirming their reliance on God led to their miraculous deliverance, and that you can see in Isaiah chapter 36. The miraculous deliverance includes the arrival of the Egyptian army, whose efforts on behalf of Judah will be seen as a gift from God. Just as this has been fulfilled in early times, we can all hope to be part of a similar turning to God and experiencing his deliverance in the last days. And I really love this chapter. It's short and sweet, but it's like a poem. It's just gorgeous. I love the first verse when it has the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, and that talking about Cush, the people of Cush, Cushites, and when it says there's different interpretations that are here with Carrie Mulstein, maybe the buzzing of wings, the busyness of the cities, the prosperous, population. It could be because of the whirling wings. And he also mentioned bugs, which I still think, though, I think it's birds. I think it's those birds with not a stork, but maybe. I think the long-legged white bird with the long bill that live in this region, in that in the area of Egypt and in the African continent. I just think that's pretty. That's just a beautiful mindset to me. It reminds me of like Lion King when all the birds are flying away. Like that's just like a whirling of winds from water. And when you see a bird flying over the water, it rustles, it's whirling. So that's my personal take on that aspect. And then when it comes to sending the messengers, it's like sending sending people that are ambassadors by the sea. It reminds me of Tahitians. It reminds me of Polynesians. um, Sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even a vessel of bulrush, or in this it's saying it's papyrus. But I mean, Tahitians are masters of the sea, and there's a reason we win every race, canoe race, um, ever. And I think that's pretty amazing to see, and to see my cousins win. Personally, it was really fun. The Molokai to Waikiki canoe ride, because it shows just how the determination of when you also not only are the nation scattered, peeled to a people terrible from their beginning, hitherto a nation meted out and trodden down, those lands and rivers have spoiled. It's like they're going off to the netherworlds of the great beyond. And it's just knowing that there's the preparation in your vessel to sustain yourself, that you're physically capable to take yourself through. And it's not just one, because as a canoe, as navigating the seas, Tahitians, there's everyone on the boat is an essential part of the travel across the ocean. One to steer, one to guide, um, and then it needs to be in unison and working together, or you're lost at sea and there's no progression, and the mission won't be accomplished. And I just think that's what comes from my imagery when I read that. And dwellers of the earth, that the ensign then to share after all of that work and going through the trial, but going on the mission that is your life, the mission that is your calling, the mission that is your purpose on this earth, and raising that ensign being the proclamation of the Lord. And raise the ensign in the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. And I just find this to be really beautiful imagery here, that the Lord said unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear heat upon herbs, and like a cloud of dew in the heat of the harvest. For afore the harvest, when the bud is perfect, and the sour grape is ripened in the flower, ye shall both cut off the sprigs with pruning hooks, so as cleaning and tending the garden, and take away and cut down the branches. They shall be left together unto the fowls of the mountains, and to the beasts of the earth, and the fowls shall summer upon them. And so the birds will come and eat, and the beasts of the earth shall winter upon them, so that it will sustain the world, sustain the creations of the Lord. And in that time shall the present be brought unto the Lord of hosts, of a people scattered and peeled, and from a people terrible from their beginning hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden under foot. those lands and rivers have spoiled, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, the Mount Zion. I'm saying that working to get to that Zion, it's not going to be easy. It takes work, but that is the Lord's rest. As I will take my rest, in verse 4, and I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear verse. And so we're learning that there is work to do, even in heaven, even in Zion, even in our own individual heart and mind, to be ready and prepared. Like I said about the canoes, the canoe, Tahitian canoeists, and you can't do it until you're ready and prepared. There needs to be a preparation. There's training. There's getting used to knowing direction, how to navigate, how to see the stars, how to see the currents, how to look on the horizon, how to study these things, and then also to work together as a team to be able to accomplish the goal. And with the Lord, it's possible. And I don't know if there's anything else anyone would like to add, but that's my testimony about it.
Was I making a lot of noise during your thing, hon?
Nope, you did fine. Did
Can
you
you hear
want
me?
to? Yep. Would you want to contribute? Did you get to hear?
Hello?
Yes. Did you want to share?
Can you hear me?
Yes. I
I
can hear
can't
you.
hear you. Yours just went away. Maybe it's where I am located. I'm passing in front of Victor Valley Hospital right now.
Okay. Well, I can hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can. I can hear you.
Can you see me?
Nope.
Hey, I can hear you now.
Was my microphone
I
muted?
can hear you. For the last maybe 15 seconds or so,
No. Okay.
15, 20 seconds. But you can hear me the whole time?
Nope. I think you were muted. But did you get to hear? You heard before that though, like the about
It
45 minutes.
was hard for me to hear because the patient had the TV going
Gotcha. Well, chapter
and was
18.
talking.
Gotcha.
Yes, yes. But
Beautiful chapter. One of my favorite
I'm just
chapters in Isaiah.
I'm I'm just glad I wasn't making noise during your reading.
Oh well, thank you. Did you want to share anything though?
Mhm. Oh, I heard you when I came out. You said something like going into the great beyond and and uh, and navigating. And yeah, I know they have a true navigator. They are true navigators.
And
They don't
it's
need the stars. They don't need a compass. They can just sail with the current between one place to the next.
mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yep. And it's all by, you don't do it alone either. Like you work together.
Well, he does.
Hmm?
He was the story was of the navigator. So
Mm.
he was the one that was trained and knew what to do,
Yeah.
and he told the other people what to do. Yeah, one year they had the Hokulea and I can't remember if it was Yap or Truck, but I think it was Yap or Truck. Send a guy to go on as representing their island for going on there, and he brought his wife, kids, and a goat. They said, "Oh, we don't take women on this thing." I said, "What? You guys didn't populate these islands without taking a woman on the boat." But anyway, so he sent the wife and the daughter home, but he said, "I'm keeping the goat."
Mm.
And then after I don't know how long it takes to get from Hawaii to Tahiti, but after a while they got lost, and he knew exactly where they were, and he got them there, got off the boat, and said, "I'm never doing this with any of you again because you guys aren't navigators."
But they got lost. He was there.
He didn't need their compass. He
But he
didn't need the
was he
GPS
was lost
device.
too because he was with them.
No, he wasn't lost. He was letting them do their thing, and they got lost. The storm came up, and they were lost,
Mm.
but he wasn't lost.
Right.
So he got him to TD. You can read about it. It's in one of the years between 80, 87 and 95, something like that.
Mm.
You'll read about it. It's written in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't fare favorably for the guys on that boat.
Mm. Well, that's what the beautiful thing about the, like I was saying about the navigating, is what Tahitians do is not typical to be without other people, but like I was explaining of the family that we have, the Matrangis, he came from Tahiti and that we're related to, and the whole Molokai to Waikiki race, the canoe race. And this was in 2016 when I went to the Molokai to Waikiki race and went to the Waikiki with Vivian Matrangi. And when we went there, we had all of the Tweres out. Nephi was there too. We had the whole Tweres out dancing, singing, lays, totally prepared. And to first canoe, Tahiti, Shell which is Shell gas station in English. But Shell is the sponsor, proud sponsor of Tahiti in all the canoe races, and comes in cheering, dancing, giving all the lays, playing the tuere. Second one, Tahiti, the second canoe, coming in and dancing, performing, everything. And then we've got, we packed up and left. And then everyone else came in. Long time after. And they didn't get the entourage because we left. We're with our people who are finished. And the point of that is that everyone is on the path together. In a canoe, you can't just say, I'm going to do it by myself. You need to have those other people, and you all need to be in alignment to work together, different roles, but working as a whole. And in Isaiah, when it says of calling messengers and ambassadors by sea, even in vessels of bulrushes or papyrus upon the waters, saying, Go ye swift messengers. So swift, fast, being able to work together to a nation scattered and peeled, to a people terrible from their beginning. Hitherto a nation meted out and trodden down. Those lands the rivers have spoiled. And it's you've got a mission. You've got a mission to accomplish. All ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers in the earth, see ye when he lifteth up an ensign on the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. For so the Lord said unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear heat upon the herbs, and like a cloud dew on the heat of the harvest. And I got to read more about the aspect of the gardening and the cultivation of these people, and to create Zion, to help them. Again in verse 7, when it's called again of, in that time shall the present be brought unto the Lord of hosts, of a people scattered and peeled, and from a people terrible from their beginning hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden under foot, whose land the rivers have spoiled, to a place of the name of the Lord of hosts, to the Mount Zion. So I found that really incredible, because again, we can't do it alone. It's realizing when you have the blessings of the gospel, or of the ability to not navigate these troubling, challenging times in life, you want to bring other people with you. Like the navigator, he's like, "What are you talking about? I bring my wife and my kids. You're crazy." And that's how it is. We want to bring everyone that we care about, because we don't want anyone to be able to be choosing, but I mean, choosing to be away, but that's their choice, and we can only do the best we can of sharing from where we are, to then embrace and be of like the whirling wings of the birds, and flying and soaring, because we're able to grow together. It's like a gardener having one thing growing here, another person growing this, and then you're able to share and collaborate together, and everyone benefits. So the aspect of the gardener, and then the aspect of the Phoenician canoe, and the navigators of the ocean. And so I say those things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Hey,
And Dad, would you be able to?
hello.
Oh, you just got to the house. Okay, I'll say the closing.